Thomas here with Much Props, going to give you another how-to video. Today is the last day of 2021, and I thought why not for this last build of the year to look at my analytics here on YouTube and see which build had the most views this year. According to YouTube, my mask that I made from the Ghost of Tsushima has got like 159,000 views this year, even though it was a build from a previous year. But to each his own, whatever. I decided to go back into Ghost of Tsushima, which is a pretty awesome game if you've never played it before. It was one of the very few games that I got to actually play all the way through, and I really like the monkey mask. I'll put the proper name of it from the game on there, but it is pretty iconic to me, and I think it's something that stands out a little different than the rest of the Mimpos that are in the game. So I thought, why not build that? So today we are building another Mimpo from the Ghost of Tsushima video game out of foam and a little bit of faux fur. Let's get to building. Figured I would end the year with showing my template making technique of choice, the low-tech duct tape and foil method. I find an image online to go off of and start pushing foil onto my dummy head. I tape it into place and build up the shape until I'm satisfied with the look. Once you get the hang of this method, you can pretty much make whatever you want without the need for a computer or Epicura files and unzipping and all that stuff. When the shape is where you want it, cover it with one piece of foil and duct tape it completely. Looking at my reference, I draw the cut lines for my template. I mark high areas and valleys for the lines, trying to stay in line with the contours of the mask itself. Once my lines are marked, I label the parts based on where they sit on the face and put registration marks every inch or so that I can realign the parts when I glue it up with my materials later. The duct tape pattern is cut off and then transferred to poster board to make it easier for tracing and more legible for my patterns that you see in the description below that are always free. Time to transfer the template to my material. I'm using 6mm HD foam for this build. It's thick enough to hold its shape and thin enough to allow me to curve the foam into rounded areas. I get asked a lot if I can use other materials. My answer is typically, I don't know. I know with rigid materials like cardboard, it's harder to get those round shapes, and my templates would need a lot more cut lines or parts. I would say if you see dart lines on my pattern, that's the V cuts that you see, your material probably needs to be a little flexible. If you plan on making something of mine, please don't forget to read the cover page. It explains the highlighted edges, marks, and other helpful instructions for putting it together. Also, please tag me if you post it online somewhere. I would love to see these templates getting put to good use and see your versions of my builds. Before assembly, I heat form a couple of the pieces. The snout area is pretty curvy, so I need to help the foam get closer to the end shape and prevent the seams from pulling apart. Heat the foam up and push it over a round object. I use the glass cover to my back porch light. You can use just whatever you got that's a round shape. Another question I get asked a lot is, can I use a hair dryer? The answer is no. Hair dryers don't typically get hot enough. If it did, it would burn your hair off, especially when you're using high density foam. You can get a heat gun for pretty cheap online at most home improvement stores or even Walmart. If you are getting into foam fabrication, it's an extremely helpful tool to have. Time for assembly. I start by closing up the darts, then following the registration lines I join parts together. My glue of choice is barge contact cement. It's a bit more expensive than other glues, but I usually get a really good result and good adhesion from it, usually with only one coat. You apply it on the edges, let it sit for a few minutes, and then when it's no longer wet, you tack stuff together. The more practice you have with foam fabrication, the better your seams will get and the less cleanup you'll have to do later. I have thousands of hours of practice so far, and it seems pretty simple to me, but I can remember being a noob and trying to get it just right, so here's the best advice I can give you. Work slow, learn from your mistakes, and realize that mess ups are just battle damage waiting to be painted later. Somehow I missed a little section here, so I just added some glue to stick this little piece. You could also use CA glue to tack little spots like this if you miss them, or to help pull seam separation. Adding some nostrils here. I traced where they should go so I didn't waste any contact cement and limit the amount of cleanup I have to do later. Once in place, I drilled out the nose holes with my rotary tool. I didn't mark the mouth on the template so that you could make adjustments and use this thing for other things. I think I put mine down a little too far from the nose. If I'm being honest, it should probably go a little higher up. This shape would make a great base for other animals and builds. I've already got like 2 ideas to reuse this template, so you'll definitely see it again soon. I burned it in the mouth with a wood burner and sanded back the bottom lip with my rotary tool. Make sure to wear a respirator and work in a well-ventilated area while burning and sanding foam. You don't want to breathe in the fumes or dust. I went ahead and did the battle damage while I was at it. I forgot to put the cheek overlays on before I did the battle damage, so let's do that now. This little raised detail is done with some 2mm foam. My pattern will bring you from the edge of the mask to the nose, then I just cut a little strip of foam to go over the brim. I simply continue the battle damage across them once I had them tacked on. You know the routine by now, surely. 2 coats of Plasti Dip. Once the dip had dried, I hit it with some red spray paint for a base color. Now the rest of the paint job will be done by hand. I'm using some Platifex acrylic paint for it. Around my battle damaged areas, I'm putting down some brown paint to make it seem like it was carved out of wood and then painted over. I have a few small gaps in some of my seam lines, and to be honest, to fill those little gaps, I just push in acrylic paint. It works as a good filler for small areas. After the first coat dries, I sealed my paint with some spray-on clear coat, then applied a black and brown wash into the cracks and over it all to age it a little bit more. I then take a paper towel and dab off a majority of it. This usually takes me 2 or 3 passes to build up the look that I want. I went a little darker than I wanted to, so to lighten it back up a bit, I hit it with some light brown over those battle damaged areas. Now time for some faux fur. I found this white faux fur at a home decor store in the discount section. It usually is the first place that I hit now when I go to stores, usually with props in mind. You can find some cool stuff that you don't always know what you're going to use for at the time. I didn't know that when I bought this that it would eventually be a monkey mask, but I saw it, thought it looked cool, and just put it in a bin. I cut out the basic shape I need and then hot glue it down. I don't use CA glue when I'm gluing fur down because it bleaches the fur. Now I realize this is white and you wouldn't be able to notice, but it also makes the fur like brittle, so I use hot glue. To cover up the matte edge, I just simply cut off little patches of fur and hot glue that directly onto those seams. Strapping is the same as usual, 1-inch elastic banding sandwiched between the mask and a small strip of EVA foam. I hold the mask to my face to see where it lays and then pull the elastic tightly past that point to get my length. I also trimmed back the fur on the inside so that I could get a good flat contact on the inside with the glue. And we are finished. Here is the end result. Overall, not too bad. The fur that I used was intended to be like a blanket, like a throw blanket or a rug. And I just kind of cut it up into little parts and put it on there. But I think it works well. I know in-game the fur is technically gray, but I was kind of digging that high contrast between the red and the white. So I just dirtied it up just a little bit with some gray acrylic paint just to give it a little variation. But not too bad. Maybe you'll try and make one of these yourselves and impress your friends with your ability to pull things from your favorite video games and then turn them into real life things and then wear them around town and make people look at you like you're a weirdo. Yeah. Maybe you'll get some... And inevitably, they're going to ask you, how'd you make that? You can give them one of these. Tell them, much props. I think you definitely have to wear a man bun to wear this, but yeah, that's not too bad. Makes me want to monkey around a bit. If you enjoy what I do here on YouTube and want to see more builds like this one in the near future, please consider joining these awesome people listed here with me over on Patreon to build a bigger, better, more creative community together. Links in the description.